Welcome back to another segment of the Fly Fishing Academy. On this segment, I am going to briefly take you through tools and a few materials to get started on your fly tying journey. The first tool that I want to talk about is, of course, probably the most important tool, and that is your vise. There's a lot of different vices on the market. There's a lot of really good vices on the market, but there's a couple things that you need to understand about a vise. The jaws. Okay, your jaws need to hold your hook, and your hook should actually bend before it falls out of the jaws. So when at your local fly shop, when you're asking questions about which vise is right for you, do pay attention to the jaws and make sure that the jaws are strong enough to hold your hooks. There's also different sizes of jaws, and that goes into equating for different sizes of hooks that you'll be tying, from size 22 midges up to big 6/0 streamers for saltwater or pike flies. So jaws are important. The second thing about the vise is you're going to ask yourself the question, is it rotary or is it not? And now, not everybody needs a rotary vise, so that's something that you're just going to have to ask yourself if you want to invest in a rotary vise right off the bat, or just go with a vise such as this that holds your hooks and it doesn't rotate. So you become the rotary function as the tyer yourself. The third thing that you need to understand with the vise is they all have different ways of mounting. So this one has a solid base. Tighten it down and you're good to go. Very, very portable, because the base is portable with you. Another kind of mounting system is such as the Norvise, where you need to have a table or a board to mount it to. And that doesn't make it any less of a vise, it's just the way that they mount. And then the third way that a vise will mount is a seat clamp. So this will mount onto your desk, a table. Super portable, this kind of a vise. You can take it with you when you travel. All the vices are, but basically that's the three things that you need to know about the vise: is the jaws, is it rotary, and how does it mount. The second tool that I want to talk about is a bobbin. What does a bobbin do? Well, essentially it holds your thread. Like the vices, there's a ton of different bobbins on the market, but we'll just kind of break it down and be super simple here. First of all, it's an ergonomic thing. So how does that bobbin fit into your hands? Do you have large hands, small hands? So don't be afraid to go to a fly shop and pick up a bobbin and see how it fits into your hand, because they're all different and they all have different purposes. But basically you need to know, does that bobbin fit in your hand and is it comfortable, which will keep you tying longer. The second thing that you need to understand is that some of the tubes where the thread comes out are ceramic and some are metal. The thing with metal, it's less expensive, but they can fray. The edges can be frayed a bit, and so it can break your thread as you're tying. The other thing to know with a bobbin is that they do have some bobbins on the market, such as the Norvise system, that auto retract. So when you pull the bobbin away from the thread, it will retract itself back. They're a little more expensive, but super highly functional. And I think that's just something that you've got to decide is which bobbin's right for you. The third tool that we want to talk about that you need to get started on your fly tying adventures is scissors. And as you get more into it, you're going to understand that a really good pair of scissors does make a difference. And so if you're going to invest some money into getting tools right off the bat, I highly suggest that you get yourself a good set of a good pair of scissors. Again, there's multiple different scissors out there. I guess short and sharp, ones that will cut your thread or cut your material. They have tension scissors, which allow you a lot of control over how you're cutting. What I do advise though is to maybe get a couple cheap pair of scissors and then a couple of expensive pair of scissors. And the cheap ones, maybe cut your wire. I don't know, people are gonna cringe when I say that. But they will get dull fast, but they do serve a purpose, because some of the things that you cut, you don't need a good pair of scissors and you don't want to ruin a good pair of scissors. But you'll thank me later if you start off with a couple really good pairs of scissors. And talk to your local fly shop and see what scissors are right for you. The fourth tool that I want to talk about is a hair stacker, deer hair stacker. And basically it's a very simple mechanical instrument, and all it's doing is aligning the tips of the hair. Again, there's multiple different hair stackers out there. You can see here I have a couple different sizes of ones, but they're not rocket science. They will align the tips of your hair, which you'll learn when you're tying flies that's important. It might not be something you need to invest in right away, but if you're making the trip to the fly shop to get your tools, pick one up, because you're gonna get to a point probably pretty quick where you need to start tying with deer hair, and then you're gonna wish you had a deer hair stacker such as this. So they're not expensive. Grab one of these. The fifth tool is extremely simple, but it's effective, and it is a hackle plier, and there's not much to it, but what you'll understand is when you're wrapping hackles mostly, but sometimes you can be wrapping other things and your fingers are just too fat and chunky to hold on to them. You also waste more material if you don't use hackle pliers, because these can just grasp onto the tips of hackle. Then that allows you to wrap it around your hook. So definitely inexpensive investment, and it's something that you will definitely use. So grab yourself some hackle pliers. The sixth tool that you'll need to pick up is probably the most dreaded of all the tools, because it is a learning curve to learn how to use these, and it's a whip finisher. And so what a whip finisher does is it whip finishes your fly. So it finishes off the thread at the end of a fly, and it looks interesting, and maybe it looks intimidating, but trust me, it's really not that hard to understand how to use these. But you do need one, and maybe two. They're not expensive, but they're a necessity to your fly tying kit. The seventh tool that you should pick up for your fly tying kit is a bodkin. Yeah, it's basically a long, pointy, pokey thing, and it's used, you can see this one's very well used, and oftentimes it's used to pick glue out or pick out feathers or material. Probably the most simple of all the tools, but it is highly effective, and I mean, you can find things around the house that will be similar to the bodkin, but they're not expensive, so grab yourself a bodkin. And now I want to talk about some materials, and that is a 32-hour video that we could put together as far as materials go. And obviously you don't need to go into the fly shop on day one and get all the materials, but what I do suggest is that you pick up some white thread, some black thread, and some olive. And now a 6/0, an 8/0, or a 140 denier, maybe both sizes in each of these colors. And you got to realize with white thread, you can always take a marker and color the part that you would see, but definitely pick up these three colors. They'll be used on a lot of flies that you start tying with. Another thing that you definitely need to pick up, probably the most important thing, is a hook, or lots of hooks. And so I guess you could break your hooks down into dry hooks, nymph hooks, and streamer hooks. And now there's a whole ton of different shapes of hooks and sizes of hooks. Again, you're gonna have to just pick a few basic patterns, like a woolly bugger, a chenille worm, something like that, and then find the hook in the recipe and then pick them up. But definitely get yourself some hooks. Hooks are not expensive, and definitely don't have to go into getting really expensive hooks to get started. just get some hooks that 50 hooks for $8 or $9, and you can learn to tie that way. But you're gonna need some hooks. Another thing that I highly recommend picking up is glue. And now glue comes in 3 different forms, I guess. You got a basic Sally Hansen, which comes from probably the beauty industry, and it takes a little more time to dry. And you have this UV type glue, which also then requires a light to get it to cure. And then the other thing here is like a 2-part epoxy. So you'd have to mix 2 pieces together and then it'll cure pretty quick. I'm not a fan of the 2-part epoxy because it takes so much time and you got to pre-mix all the stuff. And then the stuff that you have mixed, you have to use, or else it's going to harden on you. But I highly recommend probably something like Solarez. Pick up some of this, and then you can get yourself a light, because you're going to need a light, and that'll cure it, within seconds of shining the light on. But don't overlook something simple as Sally Hansen, which is a very simple glue to use, and it does take a little bit of time to glue. But if you pick yourself up some Sally Hansen, some Solarez UV type glue, and a very simple UV light, I think you're going to be set up for quite some time. And as far as like materials go, I think if you were to start off with 4 basic materials, you can get a lot of flies tied. Some schlappen, some chenille, multiple colors that you can get this in, some marabou, and get yourself some saddle hackle. And you don't have to go spend money on a really expensive cape or any means like that, but just some of these feathers and synthetic, I guess, materials, and you'll be able to tie yourself the woolly bugger to get started, which is a great pattern, highly effective and very simple. And you can crush yourself out a bunch of worms, which we all know those are super effective as well, and they're very easy to tie. And I think something like this will get you and your tools put to good use. Once again, I'm Dana Lattery with the Fly Fishing Academy, and I hope that this simple breakdown of the tools and some materials that you need to get started in fly tying will help you guys out. And don't be afraid to go into your local fly shop and talk to them and ask them what they recommend, because a lot of fly shops are full of experts in this area, and they can get you started and set up as well.